boundaries with your coaching clients. There are some clients that are wonderful, and there are some clients that might be pushing your boundaries a little bit, which they still might be wonderful, but you and them will need to figure out a little bit more of an adjustment in the boundaries. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So put in the comments where you're watching from. This is all international now, so I'd love to see where you are coming from. And if you're watching on a replay, #replay, so I can see that you've been there. If you have any questions, just add them this way so that I can answer as we go along. So today we're talking about how to successfully hold your boundaries with coaching clients. So let's see, what would be a client that you would need to have a little bit of a boundary adjustment with, right? So that would be somebody who might be over-expecting something from you, overreaching a little bit, or somebody who might be needing more and expecting you to somehow do that extra thing for them, even if it's not necessarily inside the contract. So this is where the question comes in as to what do you do when this happens? When you're getting pressure on your boundaries, what do you choose to do about that? Do you accommodate whatever the client is asking because you have a contract and you just feel like I have to do whatever they ask? Or do you have some sort of a standard as this is how I handle a boundary issue? So this is what we want to look at, is how you can adjust yourself in order to be able to handle a boundary issue correctly without making anybody wrong, without feeling like you're not good enough, without feeling frustrated, without feeling like you are somehow less than simply because they are needing more, so you must be not doing something. All those emotional things always occur within if there is an issue of a boundary in your system overall, and that's not taken care of in how you present it in your coaching practice. Okay, so you might be really successful in what you do. You might have lots of clients, or you might be at, just starting a specific practice. Maybe you pivoting into something new, and the clients that you're getting might be a little bit different now because you have changed, because what you are doing has changed. When that happens, we always encounter almost like a test to our boundary. Something in us that says, let's see what is the new arrangement here, right? Like what would be the best way of handling the boundary that actually works for who you are. So all the issues with boundaries, they don't show up because we're doing something wrong. They show up actually because we're being brave and doing something, but they are telling us what needs to be changed. When we listen to those things that come up, we are able to course correct a little bit. So then we don't create the same issue with, let's say, the next client and so on. You can also look like, do I have a repetitive client boundary issues? So put that in the comments if you know that you do have some specific boundary issues that come up. And boundary issue could be the client asking for more of your time, or let's say they're not paying on time when they said they will, or something else like asking for more of your attention on something or expecting more. So we'll look at all of that. But put in the comments, what is it that you're experiencing as far as your boundaries in connection with your clients? Because that creates conscious understanding of what needs to be corrected. If we don't know what issue we have, we don't know how to correct the issue. All right. So the goal here is to stop being triggered when your boundary is being challenged. Okay. And also to stop feeling not good enough when the boundary is being challenged. Because there's always going to be some challenge to your boundary, but how you handle that can either be no problem, I know exactly what to do about it, and not only that, I'm going to use this to empower my client, to educate my client, to uplift my client. Or the same circumstance could be used as something to put ourselves down, to put the client down, to create struggle, and nobody wants a power struggle with a client. That's not the best thing, and we never, ever, ever want to create that, because that means we're actually in a situation or internal arrangement of proving. As soon as we're having a power struggle with a client about anything, about payment, about the phone calls, about, how long the session goes, any of that, we are immediately in the psychological and energetic state of proving. We now feel like we're not good enough and we have to compensate. And that compensating is what looks like the struggle. So energetically, boundary is actually a definition of your space. And your space is based on your standards. So whatever it is that you decided in your business that this is how I choose to run my business, this is what then needs to be shown or somehow expressed to your clients so that it is clear that those are the parameters. When we either don't set the clear parameters ourselves, we're just overly helpful, or when we set the parameters but then break them. This is what I see a lot with my clients. They do set the parameters, but then if somebody has a specific button that gets pressed in them, they end up overgiving or stepping on their own boundary. Most of the time, that is for, the nurturer types, the ones that want to really help out, and if the client is in trouble, instead of being the coach that is helping the client to rise up, if there is an issue of this cycle of, oh, but they need help and, I can't handle that somebody needs help, then the person ends up kind of needing, and you as the coach might be tempted to keep giving to feel the need, to fill up that hole. But, people who have that need, that hole is not new. Most of the time it has nothing to do with whatever you're actually coaching on. It's much bigger, which means it's probably not your job to fill that hole. It's the job of the client. What is your job, though, is to help the client recognize that this is an issue. This means you would have to be courageous with your client to actually speak up and say, hey, this is something that I'm noticing, it has been happening again and again, maybe third time now, that this is what you're asking, this is what I'm saying, and then there's this loop that's going on between us. So let's talk about that. Ask them what do they feel about it, and so on. So you start the dialogue, but you point that out so that you can act as a coach that actually empowers the client, instead of acting as a parent that's trying to save the child from, whatever trouble the child is feeling in that moment. Okay. Hi, Beth. Hi, Elizabeth. Nice to see you. I see there's more people there. I can see everybody in this setup, but hi. So for the ones of you who are meeting me for the first time, I'm Eugenia Oganova. I am Wealth Energetics Business and Marketing Coach for women entrepreneurs, for coaches, for healers, for holistic health professionals who want to align the energetics of their business so that their business fits them like this perfectly tailored outfit. That creates space for you inside your business. And because you have space, you then can innovate, you can create success as well, so the business becomes profitable, it attracts correct clients, and you feel joyful and free inside that business. So that's what I do. I help people figure out what is their, sole purpose, essentially, what is their design, how they made this lifetime, and what they need to do in order to make their business fit them. So instead of working for their business, they actually have the business working for them. All right, so today we are talking about how to successfully hold boundaries with your coaching clients. And we looked at many different components already that have to do with your presetting sort of the pattern as to what your boundaries are, and then recognizing when you are stepping over your own initial understanding of how you want the arrangement to be. So in order to hold correct boundaries, we actually have to be super confident in who we are and how we choose to show up. Okay? So we need to know what to say in the moment when the boundary is challenged, instead of acquiescing or withdrawing or just, doing whatever the client asks and then afterwards feeling resentful. Okay? That's how you know that your boundary got overstepped, by the way, is that even though you accommodated, afterwards you feel bad, you feel resentful, you feel somehow less than, or you feel like you gave more than you should have. All those things are indicators that boundary was off. So energetically, when you're holding correct boundary, you are empowering yourself and your client. When your boundary is off, you end up following the disempowered client. Essentially, when client is challenging your boundaries because they're having an issue, they're not holding their own power, which is fine. I mean, that's why they come to us, right? To help them hold their power. But if we happen to have a boundary issue, that means that that very issue that the client is having, we get triggered by. We end up taking it personally, and then we either overgive or we make too rigid of a boundary. That's another thing I've seen that women do, especially if they don't know how to make the boundary correctly. When we know how to make a boundary correctly, then it's very clear and it's empowering of the client. When we do it incorrectly, we either erase the boundary and overgive in trying to be helpful, which actually disempowering the client and us not being a coach but being a parent, or we end up doing the other extreme. We make the boundary way too rigid, like an electric force field. I'm sure you've seen that. So let me know if you notice which one of those two types do you fall in with your boundary issues. Do you notice that if somebody is challenging your boundary, you're the type to acquiesce and give them what they want instead of holding your boundary? Or are you the type that ends up wanting to just say, no, okay, I don't need this is all wrong, no, this is what it's not in the contract, like making too rigid of a boundary? So there are always exceptions. There are always situations when the client is truly needing our help, and we are meant to actually support the client, but it's not anymore a boundary issue. It's now the client is having whatever they are having, our heart goes out to them, and we choose consciously to give more. That would be, let's say, an extra appointment, an extra phone call, whatever it is. Like, let's say if the client has, I don't know, death in the family, or like right now in California, there are fires going on. So if you have a client there, you might want to interact with that person to support them a little bit more or something like that. That's different. That's an actual event. And then there's a choice versus nothing specific going on, but the client is having a disempowered moment and then pulling on you, and then you choosing to accommodate that out of being over a nurturer. So I can see that some of you are of that type. That's the parent type. That's the one that instead of being a coach is not meant to be the friend or the parent. Coach is meant to be somebody who actually empowers the client. And yes, ideally in a friendly and, joyful way, so you actually end up connecting very well. But it's still somebody who's like in your corner to help you grow. Not somebody who's going to cuddle you and make sure you don't feel bad. Because, transformation doesn't always feel good. So if we always try to protect clients from feeling bad, they can never have a transformation. So actually required in a sense from being a coach is that you have to be courageous to point out certain things, and over giving is actually one way how we disempower the clients. Okay. So let's look at who are the over expecting clients, the ones who tend to challenge our boundaries. First of all, those would be the types of clients that tend to ignore how to contact you. Instead of following the rules, like let's say you said that, this is my office hours, or on the weekend I don't respond to emails, or it's only email versus voicemail, or only voicemail versus email, or whatever it is that your parameter is. And then they almost like abuse the thing that you allowed them to have, or they asking for even more when it's not really warranted. As I said, there's always exceptions. Sometimes it is warranted, but then you will know in your intuition that this is just truly like you want to reach out. You don't think of this as, oh, it's another session. You think of it like, yes, this person needs right now my support. But that's very much a rare occurrence in a business contract. And it's not written in a contract. It's when you're just being a human being with a heart. But in the arrangement of your contract, there are parameters. And it's your job to know what those parameters are. It is shocking to me how many women entrepreneurs never set these parameters. They just kind of assume like, well, I'm always here. I'm always available. Anytime, call me. Anytime, email me. And the problem with that is it attracts clients who want that kind of a support, which is more like, help me feel better, but I don't want to do the work type of person, versus I'm doing my own work and I'm strong already and successful already, but I want the next level. Help me get there. Help me shorten my timeline to get there. So we want to attract the correct clients, the ones who don't challenge our boundaries, which means we need to be clear that we do set the parameters, right? So the other way you know this type of a client is somebody who expects a million things to be done in every appointment. So you understand as a coach that there is certain depth required in processing an issue. So if somebody brings up an issue, you can go deep in it in that appointment, maybe 2, maybe 3 issues, but they would have to be related. But if the person says, oh, and I also want to coach on that and work on this, and by the way, let me tell you this story, this is somebody who's not respecting your boundary because you're there to help them go deeper. And if they don't want to go deeper, they just want to stay shallow, you might be tempted to help them with all the things they're bringing up, but in doing so, yet again, you're not being the actual coach because you're not helping them go deeper. You're going with what they're asking, and they're asking to stay on a surface and do many things instead of going deeper in 1 or 2 that are actually important. Another thing is the clients that tend to blame you for something that didn't work out for them. Now, we all know that it is a responsibility of us to do our own work. Same thing with our clients. It's responsibility of them to do their own work. And then we communicate and support each other and we guide our clients. So when the client says, well, it didn't work out because, you said, and then you said this, and then it didn't work out because you said, there's an energy that's being thrown at you. That's also a boundary issue. And you might be tempted in that moment to either defend, like, oh no, I didn't say that. Oh, well, I said that, you misunderstood. As soon as we do that, we're not being a coach. We're being a parent that is trying to contain the child that's starting to throw a tantrum. That is not a coaching relationship you want. So if you notice that you attract some of this type of an interaction with your client, you need to really look at where is it in how you presenting yourself to the world, you are putting out that it's okay for them to rely on you that much instead of relying on themselves. Obviously, complaining client, anytime the client complains, like, well, I did this, but it didn't really work, and then you said this, and then, well, why do I have to wait this long? Anything like that, I so hope you don't attract clients like that, but if occasionally that happens, that's also a boundary issue, and that's also something to look at as to what is it with you, within yourself, that is being mirrored. Where are you complaining about something to yourself, maybe totally privately, but universe knows your private thoughts. So where are you having that specific pattern that then ends up translating into that kind of a behavior with a client? And another one is clients that do those types of behaviors is because they have difficulty owning their own greatness, their own accomplishments. So they kind of always think of themselves as not good enough. That's the hole I was telling you earlier about, that energy of feeling like it's a bottomless pit with some of the people where no matter how much you give, it's still not gonna, like they always want more and they want to stay longer on each appointment and they want to ask more questions. And as soon as you have 1 minute before the end of appointment, they have 2 more questions. Oh, just one more thing. Those are the people who have this internal not enoughness. And as much as we want to be compassionate to it, of course, our job is also to lift them up from it instead of accommodating it. All right. So Now that we looked at that, let's look at difference between the overarching, reaching client and the client that is actually just achieving a lot, like somebody who wants to achieve a lot. The main difference would be is the client who wants to achieve a lot and they kind of ready for more a lot. They are able to put things in sequence, in perspective. They are not expecting you to do it for them. They're expecting themselves to do it, and they're looking for direction, instruction, support so that they can launch themselves forward. Those are the people who know how to sequence, prioritize, like how to say this thing goes first, this goes next, this goes next. So let's say they can come to your appointment with a lot of things going on, but they also know like, okay, the main thing I want to deal with today is this. And if we have time, I'd like this, and also that if we have more time left. So that gives you the clue that, okay, this is a person who's actually doing their own work. They present, they like there, right? And they're not asking, they're not pushing and pulling on you. That's not a boundary issue. Those are the people that you actually want to have as your clients. Versus the overreaching client, those are the ones who kind of want you to do it for them. So they are maybe bringing a lot of things to you, but they're doing it out of insecurity. So that's how you know the difference. And that those are the people that no matter how much you give, it never quite feels like their needs are met. And the reason for that is because they need to meet their needs, not we meet their needs. They need to meet their own needs. And your job as a coach is to bring that up to their attention and to help them with that issue compassionately, but it's still they need to learn to do that. If instead you accommodate every time, then it's like you're being a parent that's just feeding into that issue instead of helping the client resolve it. So that's something to really pay attention to. So 2 things that you need in order to change your energy from these patterns of boundary issues is you must be spacious in your own boundary. You can't be tight as soon as somebody challenges your boundary. When somebody pushes or pulls on your boundary, you need to actually become more open and spacious. Spacious doesn't mean no boundary, it just means you need to take larger space, literally, energetically. You need to imagine your energy field growing, like if you're in a bubble and the bubble got bigger. So one of the physical solutions to that is to literally sit back a little bit. If you're on a Zoom call or even if you're on the phone and they don't see you, it's not for them, it's for you. Give yourself a little bit space from that person so that you take space. Don't leave and don't push forward in attack, but take space. So spaciousness is one thing to correct that energy. And another one is to take care of your own lack of self-worth, like your own issues about, oh, I'm not good enough, oh, I need to give them more, like the over-nurturing thing. If you're noticing you're over-giving, there's some issue there. That issue is usually having to do with, I'm not enough as me, my offer is not enough, something is not enough, and I have to compensate. Or maybe you don't believe in your pricing and you feel like, oh, this is the pricing that's really high, so now I have to overgive in order to compensate for the pricing. None of that is true. You need to clean that up within yourself first if you're noticing that you're attracting this kind of issue, so that you don't end up attracting this kind of issue. Okay? So now how do we do those things? There's 3 things that you want to do. Number 1 is all relationships must have clear expectations. So your coaching relationship must have a contract. It must have some sort of a structure for every session, and you need to be clear what that is, and you need to inform your client about what that is. It's amazing how many people don't have contracts when they do coaching relationship. They just sort of like, this is the payment, this is what it is, and we're gonna go. Or they have a very simple contract that does not stipulate any of the parameters. So you don't want to do that. You want to write them in. You want to have it literally very clear. The reason for that is so you can refer to it. So that if the client does something off, you can say, oh, I understand that you need this, but in our contract, if you remember, we have it set up this way. Now, how can I support you in you still getting this resolved? And then you give them perhaps something from your coaching expertise instead of, let's say, more time or more whatever it is that they were pushing on your boundary about. Okay? So that's a 1 thing. Number 2 thing is pre-framing. I love pre-framing. I pre-frame for all my clients, and I teach all my clients to do the same. Pre-framing means that you set the expectation in a specific way ahead of time. So you essentially tell them what kind of an experience they will be having, and you hold that experience high. You hold that frequency high, the standard for it high. So that is meant to empower your client. In other words, it gives your client an ability to really feel like, oh, okay, I got to step up to the plate here and do this because this is how we framed our relationship. So that saves you a lot of trouble later on, because if you do this correctly, you just will not have clients pushing on your boundary, because you consistently uphold them, you consistently empower them, you consistently bring that kind of a parameter to them by pre-framing. So notice if you are offering too much or anticipating trouble ahead of time, because that's also a subconscious pre-framing. Like, let's say saying, and if you have any questions, you can always email me. That's expecting that they will have questions. Why are you pre-framing that? Instead, say that if you have a question, your first thing to do would be to tune in inside and see, do I know this answer within me? If that is not so, then think of what the answer could be and then contact me with your answer, and I can give you coaching on it. That's a very different thing than to say, well, if you have any questions, just contact me. Because that's, one is training them to be reliant on you and not self-empowered, and another one is actually coaching them how to be more powerful. So your job as a coach is to support them in that specific way, okay? And the third thing is train your clients to respect their own resourcefulness. Most of the time, if you are in your power and if your client is maybe having a power wobble, they might forget that they are actually resourceful. So you want to remind them of it. You want to support them in it. You want to help them find their own answers. You want to help them walk their own path. So whatever your expertise is in your business, you want to utilize that. I mean, whatever business you're having is linked to obviously what kind of a client and what you're doing with your client. You want to utilize that to empower your client to do their own work and to connect to their own source of fulfillment. So that way they are actually able to find within themselves something that they thought that only you can give them. Then you can coach them further, because chances are you, with your expertise in that area, would know further, like deeper answer and so on. But you need to start them in the process. And the only way to do that is to teach them how to respect that they are resourceful. Because when they're disrespecting, then they're actually disrespecting their own boundary, never mind your own. So that's what we looked at today, essentially, is how to adjust your own boundary in such a way that you are, holding a proper, clean, energetically boundary with your clients that empower them instead of, training them essentially to rely on you. Okay. So the next thing for you to do is to join my Facebook group. So the ones of you who are in it, awesome, I will see you there. The ones who are not, it's Wealth Energetics for Women Entrepreneurs. In that group, I give all sorts of advice on business strategy, marketing strategy, visibility strategy, emotional strategy, how to handle everything there is, in yourself and your clients, so that you are supported and that you can create a business that actually matching you. So in the description of this video, there is a link for my group. Find that group, click on that link. It will take you to my group, and there will be 3 questions. Please answer them, and I will welcome you into the group. So I'll see you on the other side. Bye-bye, guys.